Howdy gamers. Hopefully by the end of this, you have a better understanding of not what to run on Teemo, but more so why to run certain runes on him. In my opinion, I think that what runes offer Teemo best is poke. You also have some scaling or some options to get some extra scaling for Teemo, but I don't think that that's what you should be looking to get for Teemo, as you're going to get enough scaling through your itemization and then through winning the laning phase than you would get through runes. Champions that lose early are better with the scaling runes, as they just function better. But a champion that can win early, such as Teemo, should be looking to do so. And the tools that the runes offer for him to win early are a lot stronger than the bonuses that you can get for either winning or just losing early in the scaling options with runes such as Dark Harvest or Electrocute for Teemo. I also don't think something like Press the Attack is that good, because what Press the Attack is, it's something in between. You're either getting like this poke from Summon Aery, or you're getting burst from Electrocute and Dark Harvest. Both of those are completely fine for Teemo. Something like Press the Attack is in between both of those, so you're really not getting the best of both worlds. You're really getting something in between, and I don't think Teemo really needs that. So I think that the best runes for Teemo are going to be the ones that offer him extra poke, and the only ones that really do that is Summon Aery. With Summon Aery, you deal more damage every time you damage the enemy champion. So whether it's your auto attacks or your Q or even your ult, then you send Summon Aery to the enemy. It deals a little bit more damage. And then Summon Aery's cooldown is based on how long it takes Summon Aery to come back to you. Since Teemo's such a short range champion, even though you're a ranged champion, it's still going to come back to you pretty quickly. So almost every auto and a half, you're going to be able to get another Summon Aery proc, where you're going to be poisoning them as well. Once Aery comes back to you, if they're still poisoned, you'll get another Summon Aery proc. So you build up damage so quickly with this, and where you only have to auto attack to proc it, you don't have to meet the requirements from the other damage keystones, such as Arcane Comet. Arcane Comet has to be an ability. Electrocute, you have to get 3 instances of damage. Dark Harvest, they have to be below 50% health, etc. Press the Attack, you have to get 3 whole auto attacks off before you get that extra damage off. With Summon Aery, it's very minimal investment, and that's really what you're looking for in the top lane, as whenever you damage the enemy champion, it's probably only going to be with one auto, and if it's an auto Q, it's a hard winning trade. If it's an auto Q auto, it's a really hard winning trade. There's very few instances in which the enemy is going to stand still, and then you just get 3 Press the Attack procs, unless they're attacking you, in which case the entire dynamic changes. Then it's more about kiting than it would be maximizing your damage with something like Press the Attack, because you want to have your distinct advantage where when a melee champion's weaker to you early game, Summon Aery is going to be giving you more value there. And then in the same situations when they will be diving onto you, it's the same concept as where Summon Aery, since you're so short range, is going to come back to you sooner. If they're on top of you and you're still damaging them, then you're going to be getting more Summon Aery procs off, so you're not missing out on damage in that case either. So I really do think that you have to beat Summon Aery with all the other keystones to really make a case for the runes to be useful for Teemo. And if Teemo's winning the early game, he's probably winning the rest of the match. So with Summon Aery, it puts you in the Sorcery tree, and then your secondary rune options here are okay. You could run Nullifying Orb if you're into an AP matchup, and then if you're not, you could run Mana Flow Band or Nimbus Cloak. If you're running Ignite, or even like a Barrier or Exhaust, then Nimbus Cloak is going to give you a ton of value, as it's going to give you more movement speed. With Nimbus Cloak, after you cast a summoner spell, you gain a movement speed increase that lasts for 2.5 seconds, and that movement speed increase is based on the cooldown of the summoner spell that you cast. So the longer the cooldown, the faster you go with Nimbus Cloak. With that, like I said, if you have a combat summoner spell versus TP, then it's going to give you a way easier time to chase down lane opponents, and it makes the laning phase way more brutal for them. You basically become like this ranged Darius that's very lame for the enemy to try to deal with. And you just create like impossible lane situations for them, because not only do you have a combat summoner advantage in either Ignite or Exhaust or Barrier, you also get this extra movement speed from Nimbus Cloak to run them down once you choose to like start the fight. You could also run Mana Flow Band. Teemo doesn't really need the mana from Mana Flow Band to be relevant, but it is an okay rune on him. But if you're running Teleport, I suppose Mana Flow Band's fine. And then again, if you're in an AP matchup, you can run Nullifying Orb. But I think you should be running a Combat Summoner spell on Teemo. Just the way he functions in lane and naturally wins it, I think it's going to be giving you way better value, especially in solo queue. For the third rune here, honestly, all of these are okay options. Transcendence giving you 10% cooldown reduction, Celerity giving you more movement speed, and then Absolute Focus giving you more ability power based on your level. But only while you're above 70% health, but basically basically at all stages of the game, you're going to be above 70% health when you're damaging the enemy melee top laner, which is when you should be looking to pick Teemo anyways. So I think depending on your matchups, I think most matchups you would want Absolute Focus. In matchups in which they have a dash or extra movement speed to get away from you, Celerity would be completely fine, as it would help you run down the lane opponent. It works well in combination with Nimbus Cloak, but it's just mostly about the passive movement speed you get from the W, and then also the active of it, and using that to get more auto attacks off than you otherwise could if the enemy has more mobility against you. But in stationary matchups, I think Absolute Focus should be your go-to. Since you're playing in the top lane, you're going to be getting more levels than most champions in the game, just under mid lane. And so you're going to be getting access to that ability power offered a lot faster. It's also going to help you spike in an itemization, whether you're building Sorkpin boots into Oblivion Orb faster or into Leandries. Just having more ability power early is going to be giving you more damage regardless of your itemization, but if you're going for the magic pin, it's going to be more brutal for the enemy, a lot faster. And then for the fourth rune, I think Scorch is going to be your best option every single time. Scorch in combination with Summon Aery is going to give you more poke in lane. Scorch, your next damaging ability against an enemy, sets them on fire, dealing bonus magic damage based on your level, and then it's on a 10-second cooldown. So basically every single time you're going to Q them, it's going to be dealing extra damage. And then kind of the same thing with the ult, but it's just mostly about the Q damage in the earlier parts of the laning phase. And then for the secondary runes, I think you really have to try to beat Cheap Shot and Ravenous Hunter. With Cheap Shot, damaging a champion with impaired movement or actions deals bonus true damage, and then it's on a 4-second cooldown. So you can Q them, and then your next auto or even the tick will proc Cheap Shot, and then that's just extra damage on what you're already doing. Whenever you damage them with a Shroom, it's the same thing. So you're just getting access to a lot more damage. It's so crazy that Teemo can use Summon Aery, Scorch, and Cheap Shot all with just an auto Q auto. You get access to so much damage with this that it makes a laning phase so much better, and to trade all of this off for a little bit of scaling or a little bit of more on-hit damage does not even come close in my eyes, as you're going to be winning these matchups without those, and what's offered in the other keystones I don't think is going to help you win other matchups in a normal sense. It's more so like a hack at that point. And then for the shards, I think it's going to be attack speed, adaptive force, and then armor. Depending on your matchup, you obviously want to switch the resistances. If you're into an AP matchup, then you want the magic resist, and then obviously if you're into an AD matchup, you want the armor. And then the attack speed over the adaptive force, as Teemo's primarily based on his auto attacks, so having more of them just gives you more damage. It's also pretty important to have the attack speed, as whenever you're chasing someone down or like moving past the minion wave to attack them, then the more attack speed you have, the easier it is to actually like reach them, if that makes sense. Like they're moving away, and then you can actually get the auto attacks off. So yeah, to outweigh again the secondary runes, I just don't see it with any of the other options. Like you could get scaling attack speed, which gives you about a dagger, and then 8% more damage to champions with lower health. That's okay. You could also get like bone plating and overgrowth that gives you a little bit of just more effective HP. And then for inspiration second, there's just nothing really that good here. Like you could have like biscuits and cosmic insight, but you don't make that good use of CDR compared to other champions, as it's mostly about Teemo's E damage, especially in the early game. So again, I think Cheap Shot and Ravenous Hunter is going to be your best bet. Into some ranged matchups, champions with poke abilities, such as maybe Rumble, Taste of Blood wouldn't be that bad, as you could still be taking damage from them, even when you're autoing like on the wave. But to miss out on the damage on Cheap Shot, like you're better off healing from like Corrupting Potion than you would be Taste of Blood with Teemo. With Ravenous Hunter, you heal for a percentage of damage dealt by your abilities, and then you do have to stack this up based off of Bounty Hunter stacks The bounty hunter stacks are each unique takedown, so getting a kill or assist on the top laner's one, the jungler's one, etc. It is harder for Teemo to stack this up as he's a top laner, and then if you're playing with a combat summoner, it's even harder to get unique takedowns on enemies that just aren't in the top lane, basically. But even if you're just sitting on the 1.5 or the 1.5 plus 2.5 if you killed the top laner once, then that's still all right. And then later into the game, it's very rare that you wouldn't be able to get at least an assist on a couple of enemy champions to fully stack this up. And you don't really need the healing early anyways. It becomes most impactful in the really late game team fights as you damage multiple enemies with the shrooms, especially when they're kiting into you, and then that healing lets you actually just kill an enemy in like 3 auto attacks or so and then survive while doing so. So that's where that really comes into like huge effect. So that's the runes that I recommend on Teemo. I think that the poke that's offered, and then the utility that you get from the movement speed and Nimbus Cloak, and then somewhat of the utility from Ravenous Hunter, I think every other rune has to compete with that, because the damage that's offered makes you win lane so much harder, and to trade it off for anything else is basically a scam. Let's say if you were to go into precision with press the attack, right? To get the 3 auto attacks off is a big enough ask in itself. Like, you can do that, but then by the time that you would get the bonus damage from press the attack, is that damage outweighing the poke damage from Aery? I think in a situation in which for some reason you're trading auto attacks standing still with the enemy top lane and you're tanking all of their damage, maybe press the attack would be better, but then it's like rewarding improper play at that point, because the enemy would be taking more damage from the exposed damage. Something like that. It's like you could bait harder, you could bait worse players even harder maybe with press the attack than you could punish even a good player with summon Aery. With this, it puts you in the precision tree. Nothing in this is really that valuable for Teemo. Extra healing, becoming a shield isn't too useful. Healing off kills and assist isn't too useful. And then extra mana gain from presence of mind and then restored on kills and assist isn't that useful. Extra attack speed is really a luxury. It's not that useful. Fuck, man, it's just not that useful. And then for the 4th rune, Coup de Grace, Cut Down, or Last Stand, all have like, I guess Coup de Grace is your best one, but 8% increased damage to champions below 40% health. Like, Teemo's already overkilling champions in most cases. And this only helps you in an all-in, not whenever you're poking. So you're trading off so much poke damage in Aery, Scorch, and Cheap Shot for this better all-in, but Teemo doesn't really care about the all-in, as his whole lane dynamic is putting the enemy at an HP deficit and then saying, if you want to start this fight, then you have to do it at like 80 to like 60% health to start, and then the enemy can't win from that position. And if he doesn't do that, then what's the point? It's like missing the whole like advantage of the champion at that point. You could run something like Electrocute, so to put you in the Domination tree. It's not too bad, as you could still get access to a lot of, you could still get access to Cheap Shot, Ravenous Hunter, Eyeball Collections, whatever. And then for the secondary runes, you could still have Scorch and then I suppose Absolute Focus. With Electrocute, it would give you more burst onto a target. You have to hit them with 3 separate attacks or abilities, so it'd be Auto Q Auto, which is, again, like Teemo's normal trade is an auto Q. It's not an auto Q auto, as the enemy should be kiting away from you. But if you can get an Electrocute proc, once you've procced Electrocute, that bonus damage is just down. And in the top lane, you're going to be playing against a lot of champions where the extra damage from Electrocute isn't really going to be meaningful. It's meaningful against like squishier champions, but it's very rare that you'd be playing into those in the top lane. Champions like Quinn, Lucian, like Soraka, just the non-standard top laners, because they have less base HP than other normal top laners. Against a normal top laner, they're going to have enough base HP and enough healing through Corrupting Potion or Doran Shield, or just through teleporting back into lane, that the damage that Electrocute could build up in a burst isn't going to be as impactful as the poke damage that you can consistently deal with Summon Aery. And then Summon Aery also functions as a better all-in tool because it can continuously proc whether the fight's in your advantage or your disadvantage. Because if you're running into the enemy, it's at your advantage, and if the enemy's running into you, it's still good for you, as Summon Aery is going to be proccing more if the enemy's on top of you. With Electrocute, it's just this one-time burst, and the damage isn't as meaningful into the top lane matchups. Something like Grasp, I think, is also super misguided. With Grasp, every 4 seconds in combat, your next basic attack on an enemy champion will deal bonus magic damage equal to 4% of your max health, which Teemo does build max health, but he's not Scion, man. He's not Mundo. He's not Cho'Gath. It's a different thing. You deal bonus magic damage equal to 4% of your max health, you heal for 2% of your max health, and permanently increase your health by 5. Yo, but get this. Ranged champions, damage, healing, and permanent health gained reduced by 40%. So what the fuck is the point? You're going to deal like 300 damage with this, while you could be dealing like 500, 700 with a summon Aery. What is the point? To heal a little bit? Who cares? You're going to heal like as much as like a potion would in the early game. Who cares? And then the rest of the resolve tree is kind of a scam because Demolish doesn't do anything unless the enemy is bad. And then you can get bone plating overgrowth. But if you really, this is the best part of the resolve tree for Teemo is bone plating and overgrowth. You can gain this without getting Grasp. This thing's a total scam. You could be missing out on better secondary runes in Chief Shot and Ravenous Hunter, but if you needed this extra tankiness in, let's say, a losing Bruiser matchup, which I don't even know one of those that exists for Teemo, you could have bone plating and overgrowth in the secondary runes because that's the highest value from the resolve tree is the effective health from both of these in combination. And you could still be having the poke damage. So that's my thoughts on that. Grasp is completely ridiculous. Omni Stone is also just whatever. To go with Omni Stone, again, you're just missing out on too much poke. Everything in the inspiration tree is also pretty low value for Teemo. The free boots is just luxury, doesn't really make a difference. The mana gain from biscuits doesn't do anything. The cooldown reduction is lower value on Teemo than it is on other champions. So yeah, that's my thoughts on almost all of the meaningful runes for Teemo. If I missed something, you can leave it in the comments. I'm open for discussion, but I do think that the best runes and the most effective ones for him and the most valuable and the ones that reward his proper play the most is this setup. And if there's any variation on it depending on certain matchups, maybe I'm missing that, but I do think for Teemo in general, this is going to be your best setup. Amplifying your poke damage and then also giving you a bit of extra utility. Meant to switch these two. Whoops. So yeah, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. You could also subscribe. It's just League of Legends content on this channel. And if you're interested in watching me play League of Legends, you can check out the Twitch. It's twitch.tv/SolryNelson. Links in the description. Shout out to iPav. That dude's just been gone. Where did he go? I always see him. Every Teemo main, they get on this weird trend where they just start building weird shit because they get bored or something.